I mean, life is so good, man. She is so good, and my dad. I remember we went cut firewood one time, and there was a couple in our lives that um, they were going through a really rough time, and I was kind of asking dad some questions about it, and dad did a really good job of incorporating a lesson without gossiping.
Mm, mm,
And he said, Dalton, I don't really want to say a whole lot about it. But here's what I'm going to tell you. And this is just my piece of advice for you is that you're going to have the two biggest decisions of your life have to deal with people. He
mm,
said, the first one is, what are you going to do with Jesus? And I was probably about 14 at the time. I was probably about ninth, eighth grade, something like that. He said, what are you going to do with Jesus? That's the biggest question you're ever going to have to answer. He said, the second one is, who are you going to marry? Because
mm,
whoever you marry, your decision on that is going to make your life your own personal hell or heaven.
mm. Mhm,
And I've made some really bad decisions in my life, and I know that I have gotten those two figured out
mhm,
um, because she loves me. She loves me not what I can do for her, but for she loves me because she loves me. And being loved she because she chooses to love me the way I want to be loved instead of what I can do for her
mhm.
is the greatest blessing that Jesus has ever given me outside of forgiving me. You know, and and she takes everything in stride. Being a coach's wife, the hours, I stayed
Mhm.
last night and did laundry after a game. and
Mhm.
and when she was there at the game, she was there with you know uh with our family and everything. And after the game, she held my hand as we carried stuff into the field house, and that was our 5 minutes to be together.
Mhm.
She held my hand as we walked up to the press box before the game. She held my hand as we walked out. That was our time yesterday, and she did it with a smile on her face. And I said, "Hey, I got to make sure we're cleaned up and locked up." And she said, "All right, I'll see you when I get home." The light was on, and home was settled, and she is just an unbelievable blessing. And so, man, when people who have known me, especially my dad, is always worried about me from a standpoint of how I treat people when the win loss column isn't in the positive because of how
Mhm.
hard I take and how hard I wear those things. And he always sends me a text, about every other day of like, hey, how are you? How you doing? And it's so good just to have somebody in my life that shows me the love of Christ, that loves me like Christ loves me, to validate that the wins and losses don't matter on who I am. And so I can say, Dad, I'm good. Because my being able to have that and see that my my own love for myself isn't affected as much because the person I walk with reflects who I am back to me. And so it's such a great thing to have a wife that is uplifting, especially in times of struggle. Um, man, so man, life is good. I know I'm bawling my eyes out. But life
Right.
is good. I can sit here and I've won a football game one time in 2 years, which is such a hard thing for me to handle personally.
Mhm.
Um, and I can say life is so good
Mhm.
because of the love I have, not just with my wife, but with Christ.
This is, for anybody that doesn't coach, this is the side of coaching that they'll just never get. They'll just never get. And for those of us that do coach, this is the most important side to us. This is the part
Yeah,
that we don't want to share.
it's ugly. It's the ugly part of
Right,
coaching.
right. Yeah, it's the part that's not fun. It's
Yeah,
and it creates. You're having such a response to this because it's the part that matters most, and it's the part that you can't let anybody have. You know,
yeah,
because it's the part that eats at you when when you are losing. You know, because how can I go back to practice again when these people, my family that care so much about me, I'm taking so much time away from them. You know,
yeah.
and,
Or how
and
can I
then,
keep asking other
hmm
people to do this?
hmm hmm
If
yeah, but it's so symbolic. You were right. It's so symbolic of just Jesus's love for us. Um,
yeah. And it's just it's supposed to be that way, and that's the thing about her too that when we've gone through struggles, and we've talked about it on here before, sometimes life is just not good, and it's not about fixing it. I have a hard time sometimes with not fixing the problem, whether it be at work or whether it be here at home or wherever, you know, and a lot of times we feel that as the husband or as the father, it is our job to fix things. And that sometimes it's not within our control to fix. And how frustrating and how that can be just so devastating, um, not only to other people but to us, because it's just like this is outside of my control and I can't fix it, and I care about who it's affecting. And the thing that we have been able to do that I've never experienced this in any really relationship, especially to this extent, um, is that when things are bad and we can't control it, it's okay to just be in that together. And I can't fix it, but
mhm,
know that the other person is heartbroken with you and
mhm,
that you're not alone in it. And that is also such a great reflection on Christ, because how many times have we been going through the hardest things, And we try to fix our own problems, and we try to do all these other things, and at the end of the day, it's like we use them as a lifeline. It's like, hey man, I've done it all. Like I can't. There's not anything I can think of. There's not any money I can spend to fix it. Like, I, it's up to you because I can't do it. And his response is almost like, man, I've been waiting for you to say that. Like I wish you'd have just said that first. It's when I was a kid, we'd go canoeing, and we would sit on a bank to eat lunch, and we would always go to this particular bank to eat lunch because the rapid in the Mulberry River is called Sacarailiac, and the current it goes right into this massive boulder that is, I mean, it's huge. And if you don't know how to navigate the eddies, and if you don't know how to read the water, I mean, it can be a violent situation. And when I was a kid and a young canoeer, I would always get anxiety because I would know, like, hey, it's about in the middle of the trip, and it's after this rapid, and so you start seeing the things, and I'd start getting anxiety about it. But we would sit there, and we would eat our lunch and watch people turn over, and because it was like getting, it's dinner and a show, and so but the people who were doing the things that most people do on canoe trips, they don't wear a life jacket and all these different things. Well, not only does the current go right into this massive boulder, but there's also 2 boulders under the water that have created a suction channel. And what we would do, because we knew that it was there, was we would walk up into the rapid, either before or after we got done eating our lunch or whatever, and we would just float down and kind of float over those rocks and then stand up, and it would suck you down underwater, even if you have a life jacket on.
Oh,
and it would hold you underwater because it creates this underwater current. And I think one time, we had a bunch of people, and I do not recommend this. If you're listening to this, do not do this. This was really dumb. This was an 18-year-old feeling invincible. Don't do this. We do not recommend this. Do not do this. So I did it without a life jacket one time. And I said, I want to see how long I can stay down there. And I think I stayed somewhere between like 13 and 15 seconds underwater. Now, I knew I was going to pop up at some point, and I knew what was happening in all the situations. My dad and, our family and friends were there. Like, this is as safe as it can get in this moment, in this traumatic environment. But think about if you're one of these people, and this is a great analogy for life too. If you're one of these people, who's not experienced, you're renting a boat, and they'll give you a paddle and a life jacket, and they'll kind of give you some advice, but they're just kind of sending you out on their way. And you're doing the things that people do in life. You're doing the things that you are, that are fun and all the things, right? That seemingly, there's not a problem with it, but like also it may not put you in the safest place. It may not put you up for success. And then you get to a situation of turmoil, and you don't have that life jacket on, and you don't reach for that first thing that can save you first. And like, I could have already retired by just how many people I have saved out of that river. Because I could be like, hey, I'm not pulling you out of this unless you give me your retirement. And they would have given it, because you get these people who are inebriated, and they turn over, they go up there, they hit this big rock, they fall out of the boat, their stuff's floating all over the place, they're lost in shambles, and then they get sucked down and held underwater. And every single one of them pops up with this look on their face like, I was going to die in that moment. And
Yeah.
because they'll get held down there for 5, 6, 7 seconds. And that's not a long time in the grand scheme of things. But when you're underwater and you didn't expect to be, like, that's a long time. And you can get a lot of thinking done in about 7 seconds if you're underwater.
It's a long time when you think you might be down
Yeah.
there for a lot longer than
Yeah.
5 seconds.
That's right. And so, and I mean, a lot of people got right with Jesus right there on that bank, but it's just like, hey, wear the life jacket.
Mm-hmm.
Wear the life jacket. Let it be there first, and
Mm-hmm.
and my biggest thing is that, to keep using that canoeing analogy, we've got these buckets that we'll put all of our things in. We got a fire starter kit and maybe like a small hatchet or a folding saw to like be able to start a fire if we need to, because we'll go canoeing in the wintertime. And if you go canoeing in the wintertime, you've got to know what you're doing, because as soon as your body hits the water in the wintertime, it's a clock, because hypothermia is a real thing. And really, even in the spring or in the fall, like even right now, you get a day where it's 70 degrees and windy, and if you don't have polyester and wool clothes and nylon clothes on, and you're wearing cotton or jeans or whatever, and you get in that water and you pop out of it, hypothermia is a real thing. And so, we've got extra sets of clothes, we've got a fire starting kit, and all these different things to make sure that, like, hey, if I or somebody else gets in a situation, we can go into action mode and get it to where they're in a safe place. And a couple years ago, we went, and I was really proud of the group of people that we go with. And we've been canoeing together for 2 decades at this point, and it's just a process at that point, And so, like, this lady was going with us, who was a husband of one of the guys that we were going with, or her husband was one of the guys that we were going with, and it was like her first time to go with us. And she was by herself. She canoed in the summertime and stuff before, so she wasn't completely inexperienced, but like this was kind of her first wintertime canoe trip, and she ends up turning over. And I think it took us 2.5 minutes to get her out of the water. My dad and I, we got our buckets out. We started pulling clothes out. I threw him the fire starter, or he threw me the fire starter kit. So I left my clothes bucket. 2 of the other ladies that were with us, they took her shed clothes. I mean, because it's like, if you're wearing something wet and it's 45 degrees, like you're in trouble. And me, him, and about 5 other guys, we just run out into the woods and we started getting sticks. And we had a fire started in about 2.5 minutes. And it was, and I looked at her about 5 minutes after that, and I said, I know this is not a great experience for you right now, but I just want everybody to know I'm really proud and excited about how fast and efficient we got all of that done, because I mean, it's a life altering moment. But how many times do we go through life without our life jacket on and without a plan to get reset?
Without a community.
Yeah.
Like that.
And to have people, and we can never do it alone, can never do it. And the Lord says that it's in the first book. It is not good for man to be alone. We have to have other people. And I really look at my life, and it's a river. It's a river. There's times of peace and there's times of turmoil. There's pools and there's rapids and there's eddies. And, sometimes the eddy's your friend and sometimes it's not. And you didn't mean to go that direction, but now you got to go that direction. And if you fight it, you turn it over. And, that's my biggest thing with my testimony, because I feel, and you said, hey, we're going to talk about our testimonies. I said, I feel like I've had 20 different testimonies in my life
Right.
because, I was born to a godly man and a godly woman while they were in Bible college together, and I say that they were there together because they did Bible college together. Uh, Dad's the one with the degree, but they did Bible college together. And he, I got to live in a home that had Jesus in it from the
Mhm.
time I was born, and how great of a blessing that was. And but what I've always the failure that I've always had is I've almost taken it for granted
Mm.
that he was always there. And so what my failure is, it's like a fight to not be the prodigal son, to go and fulfill my life with all these other things, whether it be football or whether it be a career or whether it be this toy or that toy or this experience or that experience. And then a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road, I look at it and I'm like, what are you doing?
Mhm.
Like, stop doing that. Like, you are putting yourself in positions that compromise who you are.
Mhm.
And that's something I tell our kids all the time. Hey, be who you're meant to be. And I think one of the biggest things that I struggle with too that leads into that is I always feel like I have to be busy. I fell into the trap real early in life of achievement means love. If I can go and achieve these things, then
Mhm.
I'll earn people's love. And that's not true. That's not true. And you try to when you have that kind of a mindset, you feel like, well, Jesus can't love me unless I've earned it. Unless I can go and be and do all these things, he can't love me. There's no reason to love me. And I feel like we kind of know that innately that there's no reason to love me. If I
Mhm.
can't give you a reason to do it, there shouldn't be a reason why you do. And I haven't had the blessing of being a father. And so I don't have that direct line of like, well, you're my child. So I can have a greater understanding of this is absolute love. Um, but at the end of the day, it's like that's what it is. But if you don't have a cognition of what that means and feels like, it's hard to keep that in mind about yourself,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
I am his child and he's gonna love me no matter what. And so I've always felt like, hey, I've got to go and do and earn, and that makes you busy. If you're having to constantly like achieve things, you always have to be bigger and better. It always has to be cleaner and more precise, effective and efficient. And these are all things I preach to our kids and our coaches and stuff all the time. But it's like if you get that to a point, we forget to be still and listen.
Mm.
And my wife, she does this great thing for me during the season. We both love to read, and during the season, I have very little time to sit and read, and we enjoy reading together. We enjoy reading books together. She'll read a chapter, I'll read a chapter. And so what she does is she'll we've got like a family Google account, and um, she'll upload recordings of her reading a book, and sometimes it's a fictional book or a historical fiction or whatever. But she's reading a book right now, and it's called ruthlessly eliminating busy or hurry,
Mm.
ruthlessly eliminating hurry. And it's written
Right.
by this pastor, and his premise is that Satan doesn't have to um, do a whole lot. Well, in today's time, Satan doesn't have to do a whole lot. He just has to make us busy. And he said the worst times of my life, the worst moments of me being a pastor or being a husband or being a father or whatever, the worst moments of my life have been when I've been in a hurry. And he was like, so Satan it doesn't have to be a big thing. He just has to make me busy. And how life has molded itself the last 6, 7, 800 years, and the difference, with the invention of the clock, with the invention of electricity at nighttime, you know, he's, and I can't remember the exact stat or whatever, but like, 1,000 years ago, people were averaging 11 hours of sleep a day. I'm
Sleep on
nowhere
his bed.
close. I'm
Oh,
nowhere
yeah.
close, especially in season. I might get 11 hours in 3 days,
Right.
because
That's right.
you're doing all these things. And even when you lay down to try to get some sleep, your mind's still going,
That's right.
and
I'm
there's
messing up
multiple
everybody's
verses.
average.
Yeah, there's multiple verses in the Bible that talk about like, hey, give it to him. Don't worry
Mm-hmm.
about things.
Mm.
Hey, if in Ecclesiastes it talks about, even when he lays down, he can't rest because his mind goes and all those things. And we have lost the intentionality on being still.
Mm.
And I tell our boys that all the time, that it's my favorite verse, be still and listen, because normally I'm trying to tell them something and they're either touching somebody else or they're fiddling with their shoulder pads or their helmet or something, and like they're distracted. And I'm like, no, be still. When we take a knee, I want you to look like this. I want your hands right here. I want your feet like this, and I want you to be still. And because our society and our culture says like, hey, well, we're just not that way. We only have 8 seconds. So like whatever. But it's like, we've got to. That's a skill just like anything else. It's a skill to be developed, to be still and listen.
Mm.
And I'm just as bad as the 13-year-old boy I try to coach every day. I'm
Right.
just as bad
It just gets a little different.
because I can be there sitting there talking to them about, hey, this is a pillar of our program. This is one of our standards that we're trying to follow. This is something that we've got to get done that day. This is what the practice schedule is. And in my brain, actively, while I'm spewing information that they need to, I'm thinking about 4 other things.
Right.
I'm thinking about, hey, this is the drill I've got to do. I've got to get us to this session. I've got to make sure this play gets called. Like, I got to make sure this kid gets the ball. I got to make sure these rotations are going in. I got to make sure that they talk about, hey, we got to have you bring a bag of candy tomorrow for the homecoming parade at the end of practice. I can't forget that while I'm talking about pre-practice. And so with all of those things going on, how can I have the blood pressure and the mental wherewithal to when a kid messes up, I go teach him instead of yell at him,
Mm. Mm. Mm.
And that's my testimony, is that at times when I have not had the Lord at the forefront, going through college, early in my career, at different points in my career, because I wanted to chase football. How did I treat people? And you've asked me, hey, what can I pray for you? And my dad asked me, or I told him, I said, I need you to pray for me that my love of football never outgrows my love for Christ's people.
Mm-hmm.
Because that right there, the act of trying to perfect football is probably my biggest footfall. Like I will trip over that, and it's a constant battle because it's a fine line between getting football to be played right, whether it's football or football, getting it to be played right, and holding the standard and teaching the standards and teaching all these good qualities, but then also having grace and being able to teach those games. So that way, when that message is heard of why we are teaching this game
Mm-hmm.
to give you these attributes, it's still hard because there's a friction there of relationship a lot of the times. And I'm not saying that tough love or hard coaching is not needed. We had a kid today go to our head coach and go, Coach Pearson's mean because I was like, hey, I'm being honest with you. And this kid hadn't had a lot of good coaching in his life. And he's like, Coach Pearson's being mean. This is not a whole lot of fun. And I was like, well, missing a block and not getting a holding penalty, in my opinion, is not a lot of fun either, because you just got that other guy killed. And I got to go talk to that guy's parents about why their son got killed.
Mm-hmm.
So, but at the same time, like, that was a really hard thing for me to hear, because it's like, am I losing that kid? Was I pushing football too much and not Christ enough? Is that relationship now to a point to where I have to step back and rebuild because I didn't think of Christ first? I thought of football first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the constant battle of my testimony. What am I putting first? Am I putting Christ first, or am I putting a relationship first? Am I putting football first? Am I putting a title first? Am I chasing these other things and trying to load my canoe with all this other stuff and trying to get on the river, and am I leaving my life jacket on the bank or on the truck? And that's the thing too. There's laws written about your life jacket. That's the funny thing, but there's people that go, yeah, and so it's like, we can't legislate Christ into people. You can't legislate it. If that was the case, the Pharisees and the Sadducees would have had it right 2,000 years ago, and Christ wouldn't have had to die. But you can't do that. You can't legislate Christ into people's lives. It has to be done with a relationship. But if you're not wearing your own life jacket, how can you convince somebody to wear theirs?
That's a great point. So that's something we talk about so much in the heart of what you're mentioning here with your relationship with that kid is that's something we discuss a lot in my team is, how are we going to communicate, and how are we delivering, but how are we receiving, and so we've talked about how the truth is to be kind, right? If I'm telling you the truth, that is me being kind.
Yes.
Now, how I deliver that, that is something that has to be first managed by my heart posture, like you said, And so, is there a great way to do that? Yes. Is there a good way to do that? Yes. And there are a million bad ways to do that, right? But if I'm telling you the truth, it's coming from a place of kindness and concern for you. And as long as everyone on the team can accept that and have that be the basis of how we receive communication, then relationships won't be broken.
Yeah.
By telling the truth, and that and we've really defined this as, when you communicate, it's got to be clear and it's got to be kind. Clarity is kindness, and so is the truth. And so anything we say to each other, first measure it by those two things before it leaves your mouth.
Yeah.
Is something you're wanting to say, is what you want to say, the root of it, really needed? Yes. Does it require your attitude at the time? No, absolutely not. You know what I mean? And so, but sometimes, yes, especially from a leader, sometimes the truth needs to be turned up a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes the truth needs to be turned up a little bit, because you got so much static and white noise going on in the background, you can't hear what I'm saying.
Yep.
But God is the same way.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to flip
God
the
is
table.
the same way. Sometimes you and sometimes he yells at us, right? But it's because we're not listening.
Yeah.
We didn't listen to the still small voice, the whisper, and the nudge of the Holy Spirit. Well, you weren't listening, so I had to get your attention, son.
Yeah.
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 And is that still kind? Yeah. It's not how we want to hear it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still kind. Still the truth.